finishing up our series called Through the Lens. And in this series, we've been exploring some of the different perspectives of people who are part of the birth of Jesus story, and looking through the lens of how people were part of God's greater plan to bring Jesus into the world as a baby. Because the reality is there were lots of different people a part of this story. Some people that we've talked about in the past weeks are not really considered the main characters of the Christmas story, or who definitely aren't a part of the nativity scenes that we set up. We've talked about people through the lens of Isaiah, King Herod, and God the Father. And today, our last one, the birth of Jesus through the lens of you. There are so many parts and aspects to Christmas, and we all have our traditions and joys and memories that make the season what it is. But what does all that matter if we don't understand why we celebrate in the first place? What does all of the hoopla mean if we don't know and understand where it all stems from 2,000 years ago? Or maybe we know it, but we just don't care. While we see the perspectives of Isaiah and King Herod and God the Father as incredibly important to the story, what really matters most of all is how we respond, how you respond to what God is calling you to, so the truth of Him can change and transform your life. So through your lens, what does the Christmas story look like or feel like? Through your lens, what does the story of Jesus bring you or show you or give you? Through your lens, what does Christmas mean and why does it matter? Maybe for you, Christmas brings joy and family and traditions. Maybe for you, the birth of Jesus brings hope to a weary world and light in the midst of darkness, happiness in unpleasant and uncertain times. Maybe for you, Christmas is your favorite time of year, but for others, it doesn't matter to you at all, or you don't like it. Thinking back to the weeks in the past that we've talked about, we first talked about Isaiah. Through his lens, he saw hope and anticipation coming for Israel in the midst of pain, in the midst of darkness, in the midst of suffering that they were going through. So through his perspective, he saw the good things were coming, and it was Jesus. And his response to this is that he tells people about the good news that is coming. He shares with people that even though things looked hopeless for them and around them, that Jesus was coming to make all things new again. We then talked about King Herod. And through his lens, he saw that Jesus was a threat to his life and to his reign and his control as king. And his response was to get rid of Jesus, to scheme against Jesus. He was disturbed by the presence of Jesus. He wanted nothing to do with the presence of God in his life, even though it would have brought him the most certainty and assurance and satisfaction he's ever known. Lastly, we talked about God the Father. And through his lens, the Christmas story is all about a love for his people. A deep love for humanity. That's why he sent Jesus, to save his people from their sin and allow them to have a relationship with God again. 3 perspectives, 3 very different roles in the story, 3 different responses to the birth of Jesus. And see, what we learn about this life-changing story, this miraculous event of Jesus being born in that little town of Bethlehem, is that it requires a response out of those who hear it. Some good, some bad. But we respond to it in some way, like we saw through this series. And that's where your lens comes into play today. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 1. And in this chapter, we're reminded of when an angel came to visit Mary to tell her that she was going to give birth to the Savior of the world. And in this passage, we're told that this is what the prophet said was going to happen years and years before, that Jesus was coming in the form of a Virgin Mary. Matthew 1:22 through 23 says this. All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. The Virgin Mary will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. Emmanuel, God with us. This title of Jesus refers to both his deity, the fact that he is God, and his identification with and nearness to humanity, that the fact that he is with us. His deity, his God nature, and his human nature. Jesus, he being fully human and fully God, is a miracle in and of itself. That God could add a human nature to his own self and still remain 100% God. Crazy. And it reminds us of this truth this morning. If God has come to us, we can go to him. We can approach our Savior with confidence, with assurance, and with certainty, and respond to what he has done because he has made the first move. He has come to us. He has sent his Son. We simply respond. The reality is you can walk away from this season by getting wrapped up in the stress of everything and the family time that we all long for and the traditions that are special to us, and we can miss the entire point. That the Virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel. This news that we just read in Matthew is why Christmas matters. And some of you might be thinking, yeah, I know, Jesus is the reason for the season. Yeah, woo, so cliche. Though my question for you then is this. How will you respond to it? By looking at the Christmas story through your lens 2,000 years after it happened, how are you going to respond to the fact that God is with you? And what are you going to do differently because of it? Because, church, I'll tell you this, whether you've heard all of this before or this is the first time you've ever been hearing it, bottom line is this: we may not have done anything about it in our lives to this point. We might not have responded to it, and it's not good enough just to know it. We have to respond to the truth that God is calling us into. What we celebrate at Christmas, the birth of Jesus, Emmanuel, coming to us, it matters. But how you respond to it also matters. Because here at Starting Line, we believe that there is more to life through a relationship with Jesus Christ. In the chaos of life, in the craziness of this season of the holidays, we understand that what we're searching for and what we're longing for cannot be found in anything of this world. It cannot be found in the things that we experience on our daily life, but in Emmanuel, God with us, Jesus stepping into our lives, creating a way for us to be with him again. That's what gives us life. That's what gives us purpose. That's what gives us meaning. The Christmas season, we have to respond to what Jesus has done coming to us on earth in human form, not because we feel like we're bad or wrong or no, that is true, but that's not the reason. The reason is that Jesus is going to give us so much more to life with him. How are you going to respond to that today? Heading into the new year, this year coming to a close, how are you going to respond to that today? Emmanuel, God is with you. Maybe for you, it's getting to church in person more regularly. Maybe it's putting a relationship with Jesus as kind of more of a priority. Maybe it's living life all the time with the joy and the hope that you experience at Christmas. Maybe it's loving others like God showed us his love by sending his son. Don't let this season go by without looking through your lens at the birth of Jesus, seeing what you find, and doing something about it that's different than what you're currently doing. If God has come to us, we can go to him. Emmanuel, God with us. Let's respond to that together.